Welcome back to This is Baseball. My name is Brandon Johnson. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope your Thursday is going well or whatever day you happen to be listening to the show. As a reminder, we have a new schedule at This is Baseball. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I am releasing brand new episodes. So let's get into today's show. So I'm sure you guys saw the news come out over the week that Braves outfielder Jurickson Profar has been suspended for PED usage for 80 games. This is notable for a lot of reasons. Obviously, when a player breaks the rules of the policy of the steroid and PED policy, they get suspended. So let's just break down how those suspensions work. So in 2014, they came up with the policy that you get 3 strikes and you're out, which is obviously fitting for baseball. So first offense is 80 games. Jurickson Profar got 80 games. So that's his first offense. Your second offense is for 162 games, so you get an entire season. We'll see you next year for that. And then a permanent suspension or a lifetime ban for a third offense. So when you get suspended, you get suspended without pay. But Jurickson Profar just signed with the Braves. So over the offseason, he signed with the team for 3 years, $42 million. He had kind of a career resurgence in San Diego last year. He had a career year. He was an all-star for the first time, and he was a big part of why the Padres were successful and made a deep playoff run. And the Braves wanted to reward him for that, which makes sense. We like what you did. We have an opening on our roster. We want you to fill it. And that's obviously how that goes. You see it all the time. And kind of looking at Jurickson Profar, he came up with the Texas Rangers, and he was a prospect with high expectations. And he came up with the Rangers, and he was fine. He had a few good years here and there, but he never was the player that a lot of people, I think, expected him to be. And then he finds his place with the San Diego Padres, and like I said, has a career year last year. So something that is interesting, and you see this all the time in MLB, I think the steroid era obviously has made a lot of people lose trust, is you see somebody that is an average or below average player that all of a sudden they're having really good numbers, and you want to be like, wow, they're having a great year. They're turning around their career. They must have gotten, into the right situation and have some people around them that can help better their career. But a lot of people, due to the steroid era and everything that happened then, they go, oh, he's clearly on steroids. He's clearly juicing. No way it's real. Now, you look at the statement from Jurickson Profar, and he said that he would never knowingly take a substance that is illegal in the game of baseball. And he even noted that he's taken dozens of tests and has never tested positive. Obviously, he said he took 8 tests last year in 2024 during his career year and didn't test positive in any of those. So I don't know what happened here. It's unfortunate for him. It's unfortunate for the Braves. It's unfortunate for the fans because the Braves are needing him. They're off to a terrible start. They haven't won a game yet. And they don't have Ronald Acuna Jr. back yet, so their outfield is a little bit of a mess, and Jurickson Profar's suspension is further wounding the Braves. So they've got some some spots that they need to fill now. I know that Alex Verdugo is an option for them. They just signed him before the season started, so they could look to him and put him in left field. But yeah, for half the season, there's no Jurickson Profar, and then you hope that he's going to come back and be as productive and effective as he was in 2024. I don't really know what the program for a player looks like when they go through a PED suspension. I'm assuming that they just continue to work and stay in game form and get to a point where they're ready for when they can come back. But hopefully, based on how the Braves are starting and just some of the holes that they have on the team due to suspensions and injuries right now, by the time that he gets back, hopefully the Braves aren't already out of it and you're just looking ahead for next year. And I think looking at PED suspensions, it's hard when this happens if you're a fan, because you kind of feel like you've been lied to by that player, where you're celebrating their success and then all of a sudden, boom, suspended, and you're like, oh, you've just kind of been lying to us the whole time. But I want to look at some suspensions over the last decade or so that I found on baseballalmanac.com. And Jurickson Profar is the notable player of 2025 so far. You had 2 get hit back in 2024, Orelvis Martinez and Noelvi Marte. You had 1 in 2023. And the most notable player in 2022 was Fernando Tatis Jr. He was doing rehab and gearing up for a comeback with the Padres and tested positive for a banned substance. In 2021, you had 4 players. 2020, Emmanuel Clase, who's now a great closer for Cleveland, got hit for 80 games. I actually didn't know that he got that suspension, so that stinks. Robinson Cano in 2020 that got his second suspension for PEDs. He had one in 2018 as well. But 2019, Michael Pineda, Frankie Montas, and then Royals pitcher Eric Skoglund got 80 games. I actually didn't realize this happened. I kind of forgot that he existed as a whole. But again, another Royal, Jorge Bonifacio in 2018, Starling Marte in 2017. 2016, you had quite a bit of players. D. Gordon was most notable on that list, I would say. 2015, Irvin Santana, Henry Mejia, Alex Colome in 2014. And then 2014 was the first year that the current PED policy was in place. So that 3 strikes rule that I was mentioning earlier in the show, where it's 80 games for the first, 162 for the second, and lifetime ban in the third. 2013 had 15 players suspended for PED usage. And this was when we didn't quite have the policy in place. So it was just kind of arbitrary. So Ryan Braun in 2013, if you remember Ryan Braun, this was technically the second time he got suspended. He was in 2011 in the MVP race with Matt Kemp and ended up winning MVP, but then tested positive for PEDs, appealed the whole thing and won his appeal and was able to forego his suspension. And I remember convincing us and having this whole press conference where he lied to everybody about it, and then 2 years later got dinged again. And honestly, in my opinion, he got suspended for 65 games. He probably should have been suspended longer. Clearly somebody that felt like he got away with it once and could get away with it again. But 2013 was a big year. Nelson Cruz was in there. Johnny Peralta. Alex Rodriguez got a 211-game suspension. Miguel Tejada as well. So that was a big year. But yeah, you could keep going back and you'll start to see names that you know. Bartolo Colon, Manny Ramirez a couple of times. You have your Rafael Palmeiros. And yeah, that's as far back as this list goes. But it's interesting kind of how this has worked. They didn't have like a real policy in place until a decade ago, and it seems to have cleaned it up somewhat. There's still going to be suspensions. I don't think there's ever going to be a year where somebody doesn't get suspended, whether they do steroids, PEDs, HGH, whatever, on purpose, or they do something quote unquote unknowingly, as Jurickson Profar and most players say. Now, the only person that's going to know the truth is obviously Jurickson Profar in this situation, so I'm not going to sit here and say whether he's telling the truth or not, because I don't know what happened. I just know that he tested positive and he's now suspended, and he seems to have accepted his suspension and he's going to do his 80 games and then hopefully just move forward and be productive. But just to close out this PED kind of portion, the Major League PED policy states, under the policy, all players are prohibited from using, possessing, selling, facilitating the sale of, distributing, or facilitating the distribution of any drug of abuse, human growth hormone, HGH, and steroid. So just stay away from it. Don't do it. If you're a player, make sure you know what you're taking. If you're taking any supplements, drugs, vitamins, whatever you happen to be taking, make sure you know what's inside of those things so you don't find yourself on the wrong end of a drug test. Please, there's too many times where I don't know what this is. Like, you got to know. You're a professional athlete in a sport, in a league, in MLB, where steroids are, the game has such a storied history around steroids. They have an entire era called the steroid era. So it's a dark spot on the league and the league's history. You don't want to be part of it. Because as we've seen with Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and other players, man, if you get a PED allegation your way, the odds of you being in the Hall of Fame go to basically zero. You have Barry Bonds, who is, statistically one of the best hitters of all time. He is the home run king, whether you acknowledge that or not. I have a lot of thoughts about that I will get into another time. I don't know if I want to do that right now, but I'll say this. I think that the voters were right to keep Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens out, because for me, if you, what's that say? Because the Hall of Fame is to celebrate greatness, right? So what's it say to the Hall of Fame, or what picture does it paint in the Hall of Fame if Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are great at their respective positions and roles on the team, but they did steroids, they cheated, they did X, Y, and Z, but we put them in because they had great accomplishments. And you go, okay, well, without steroids, PEDs, whatever, would they have been the same? You look at Barry Bonds, and okay, before Barry Bonds got into all of this, he was kind of on a Hall of Fame trajectory anyway, so it stinks for him, but you make the choices that you make, and you have to live with the consequences. And you have Fernando Tatis Jr., for example, I think is a little bit different, where I don't know if he'll be on a Hall of Fame trajectory. It's a little early to tell kind of where he's at, but let's say he does. Does he get left out of the Hall in his 10 chances because of a PED suspension that he got when he was not even actively playing. He was rehabbing from an injury. Who knows kind of where the voters will stand on PEDs later down the road, if they'll treat it a little bit differently or if they'll still be as rigid as the current voters are. We'll have to see. Obviously, that's going to be 15, 20, 25 years down the road. I tend to think it'll stay the same, but again, we'll kind of find out then. Like I said, I have a lot to say. I didn't really prepare anything for kind of my opinions on the whole deal, but you got a little brief taste of it there anyway. But let's just move off of that subject, and hopefully Jurickson Profar goes through this suspension, comes out, and he's still productive, and you're like, okay, it is what it is. Let's move on. So next piece of news that I have is Garrett Crochet, Boston Red Sox extension. So this is pretty cool. Garrett Crochet was with the Chicago White Sox. He was wanting to get traded last year, but he wanted somebody to commit long-term to him. No team was willing to do that at the deadline, so he stuck with the White Sox. But he got traded in the offseason to the Red Sox, and the Red Sox and Garrett Crochet have agreed to a 6-year contract extension for $170 million. So Garrett Crochet's 25 years old. He's not technically in his prime, but he's already a fantastic pitcher and is just likely going to get better as time goes by. And then he'll be 31 years old when this contract expires. And if he pitches like I think he's going to pitch, he's just going to continue to make even more money, whether that's with the Red Sox or another team that wants to jump in and get in on those sweepstakes. But very cool for him. Happy for the Red Sox. It's nice to see the Red Sox seemingly getting back into being a competitive organization. I don't want to say they weren't respectable, but they'd kind of taken a back seat for 5 or 6 years, and it's good to see them back after, 2004, obviously, when they broke the curse, won the World Series, then won in 2007, won in 2013, then won in 2018. So they busted out 4 World Series wins in 15 years and have been kind of in the back seat. So I think baseball's better when Boston is more competitive and has a good roster. So again, it's just my long way of saying good for Garrett Crochet, good for Boston, good for baseball. Before we get out of here, let's take a look ahead to the weekend. So Red Sox, I just talked about, are hosting the Cardinals. That's a little rematch of the 2013 World Series. If you want to go back that far, you have the Cubs hosting the Padres. I believe that's the Cubs home opener. Cubs day game at Wrigley Field is always something I look forward to on a Friday. Then a couple more series to check out. Phillies are hosting the Dodgers. The Dodgers are just clearly going to be insane this year, and Phillies are pretty good as well. And then Royals are hosting the Baltimore Orioles. Little rematch of the 2024 Wild Card Series where the Royals went on the road into Baltimore and swept the Orioles. But those are the matchups that stick out to me. I'm just super happy and excited that baseball is back in full swing, and there's just matchups, players, and stories to look forward to each and every day. But that's all I have for this week on This Is Baseball. You can catch me on Twitter at thisisbaseball_ or reach out to me at Brandjaw on Twitter. I would love to interact with you. I'm going to start getting some content onto YouTube as well. I will have all that information over for you guys. When I do that, it'll be in the very, very near future. So look out for that. I will link it here and announce it here when it happens. But until next week, thank you for listening. My name is Brandon Johnson. I will catch you later.